What's going on, everybody? Cleepus Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a quick comparison between the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro 5G and the TCL Stylus 5G. Now before we go any further, as always, I do want to remind you to hit that subscribe button, and in case you want to learn more about either phone individually, I will be linking to several other videos about them in the description, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But with that being said, let's get into it. So starting off with the displays, with the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro, we're getting a 6.82-inch IPS LCD display with a resolution of 720p, a PPI of 263, and an aspect ratio of 20.5:9. With the TCL Stylus 5G, we're getting a 6.81-inch IPS LCD display with a 1080p resolution, a PPI of 395, and an aspect ratio of 20.5:9 as well. So as far as the size and dimensions go, these phones are pretty much the same. Both are just over 6.8 inches, and again, they both have 20.5:9 aspect ratios, so definitely real tall and narrow form factors here. So this is a good thing, since both phones are on the larger side. If you're going to be on your device a lot, you are going to get a good experience here. And with these tall and narrow form factors, if you're doing something in landscape mode like watching a video, for example, you're going to get a more immersive experience. And if you're doing something like reading, browsing the web, using social media, stuff like that, with these form factors, you'll also be able to fit more content on the screen without having to scroll as much. But that being said, despite the size and dimensions being pretty much the same here, the image quality is much better with the TCL Stylus 5G, with a 1080p resolution versus only 720p. The Stylus 5G is going to have a much sharper image, and in general, I feel like the colors and brightness look a little bit better with the TCL as well. So overall, if all you're looking for is a nice large display, then you're not going to go wrong with either phone. But if you want a better image quality, then the TCL Stylus 5G is going to be a much better choice. Now for storage, both phones are getting 128GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion, so no difference here. But keep in mind, 128GB is definitely a great amount of storage, especially in this price range. When it comes to phones under $300, I feel like most of them tend to only have 64GB. So if you are looking for a 5G phone in this more entry-level price point, then both of these phones are going to be really good options. For security features, both phones do have face unlock, and they both have fingerprint scanners right here on the power keys, so definitely a great spot for a fingerprint scanner. But starting with the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro, let's go ahead and give them a try. There we go, one more time. And there we go. And now for the TCL Stylus 5G. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see there, both fingerprint scanners were real fast and responsive, no issues at all. And again, remember, both phones do have face unlock too, so if you want to use that instead, you always can. Now taking a look at the camera setups here, with the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro, we got a water drop notch for the front-facing camera. This camera is 16 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a quad camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra-wide camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. For video, this phone has a max recording quality of 2K in the rear camera and 1080p in the front. Now with the TCL Stylus 5G, we got a hole punch design for the front-facing camera. Definitely one of the better looking designs in this price range. This camera is 13 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a quad camera setup as well, with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra-wide camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. So as far as features go, as you can see here, both phones have pretty much the exact same features. Although with the TCL Stylus 5G, when it comes to video, this phone has a max recording quality of only 1080p in both the rear and front cameras. So with the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro, we do have the advantage of being able to record in 2K. Now I'm not 100% sure how many people actually use that feature, but if you do want to record videos in a slightly higher resolution, then definitely keep this in mind. But overall, both phones do have great camera setups, and as far as the photo quality goes, while there's not really a huge difference between the two, I would say that in general, for the average user, for pretty much any kind of situation, if you're taking photos you want to keep for something, the camera setups on both phones are definitely good enough to get the job done. So in general, if you are taking a lot of photos, you want a wider variety of features, and you want your photos to look good, no matter which of these phones you choose, you're really not going to go wrong here. Now when it comes to RAM and processor, both phones actually have the MediaTek Dimensity 700 processor, and with the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro, we're getting 6GB of RAM, and with the TCL Stylus 5G, we're getting 4GB of RAM. So in general, you're not really going to see a huge performance difference between the two, but that being said, for being more entry-level 5G phones, the performance is definitely good. For more moderate use in basic activities like web browsing, social media, streaming content like videos and music, and maybe some occasional mobile gaming, these phones will definitely get the job done. They're not really going to feel slow, and in general, for the average user, you will most likely have a pretty good experience with either phone. Now I did run Geekbench 5 benchmark tests on both phones, and here are the results I got. So as you can see here, not really a huge difference. The TCL Stylus 5G did technically score a bit higher, but in general, again, when you're actually using the phones, they're going to be pretty much the same. That being said though, what I recommend doing is running this test on your current phone and comparing your results to these, and that'll give you a better idea of whether or not one of these phones will be a performance upgrade for you, because depending on what you're coming from, it may or may not be. But again, in general, for most people, for the more basic activities, I do think either of these phones is most likely likely going to be plenty fast enough. Now for the batteries, there is actually a bit of a difference here. With the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro, we're getting a 5000 mAh battery that supports 15 watt fast charging, and with the TCL Stylus 5G, we're getting a 4000 mAh battery that supports 18 watt fast charging. Another thing to keep in mind here is that with the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro, we do actually get wireless charging, whereas the TCL Stylus 5G doesn't have wireless charging. So in general, the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro has quite an advantage here. Since the battery is so much larger, that of course means the battery life is going to be quite a bit better. So if that is more of a priority for you, then definitely keep this in mind. And the wireless charging really doesn't hurt either, because in this price range, there are really not a whole lot of phones that have this feature. That being said though, with the TCL Stylus 5G, keep in mind that while of course, if the battery is really a main priority for you, the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro will have a huge advantage. That doesn't mean the battery on the TCL Stylus 5G is bad. In fact, with a 4000 mAh battery, sure it's not the largest battery out there, but it is still decent, and in my experience, for what it is, the battery life on this phone is actually pretty good too. And with the 18 watt fast charging, this definitely doesn't hurt either. So overall, again, if the battery life is really a priority for you, then of course, the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro will be a much better choice. But if you're not really too concerned about the battery, and you just want something decent that works, then again, keep in mind, the TCL Stylus 5G is really not terrible either. For the software, both phones do have Android 12, which is pretty decent. I'm not 100% sure what T-Mobile or TCL's software support is really like, but I seriously doubt it's as good as something like Samsung or Motorola, for example. So while we may see Android 13 eventually on these phones, I personally wouldn't really count on it, and if having the latest version of Android is really important to you, then I would definitely go with something else. But if you don't really care that much about the software, and you just want it to be decently newer, then the Android 12 we're getting with these phones is going to be at least okay for you. As far as other features go, both phones do have NFC, so if you like to make contactless mobile payments using tap and pay, you'll be happy to know you can do that with either phone. In addition to this kind of goes without saying, but as you can probably tell by the name of the phone, the TCL Stylus 5G does in fact have a stylus, whereas the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro doesn't. Now that being said, honestly, this is really not the best stylus I've ever seen. In fact, compared to the Motorola Moto G stylus, I do think that stylus is quite a bit better. But in general, for a mid-range phone, not very many phones like this even have styluses at all, and you can only really expect so much. So if you're looking for something for basic handwritten notes and stuff like that, then just know, while the stylus on the TCL Stylus 5G isn't really amazing or anything, it will at least get the job done. But in conclusion, which of these phones is better? In general, in a lot of different ways, these phones are pretty much the same. And if you're looking for an entry-level 5G phone with decent performance for more basic activities, you're not going to go wrong with either phone. But that being said, each phone does have some advantages. On one hand, if you want better battery life, wireless charging, and maybe you want to record 2K videos every now and then you will be better off with the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro. But on the other hand, if you want a stylus and a much better display quality, then the TCL Stylus 5G will be a better choice. But again, regardless, if you're looking for an entry-level 5G phone that has good performance, plenty of storage, a really good camera setup, and features like NFC, then either phone will be a great choice. But this concludes my comparison between the T-Mobile Revvl 6 Pro and the TCL Stylus 5G. Again, if you want to learn more about either phone individually, I will be linking to several other videos about them in the description, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Kalipis Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.